There's a lot of Americans now we see online, understandably, feeling angry, feeling anxious, feeling terrified, and so forth. And they're calling for help. They're calling for direction. They're asking for direction. They're tired, they're scared, they're fed up, and they want a solution. You know, they want a way out. They want the tyrannical madness in their country to come to an end. Mind you, this is just 1 year in to the Trump administration. Just 1 year in. Now, I say this not because I accept the idea that any of this actually started under the Trump administration or because of the Trump administration, but because most of the people that you see online who are expressing their outrage and expressing their despair, that's what they think. They think so. So after just 1 year of this, you're at your wit's end. Well, how do you think that looks and how do you think that sounds to all of America's global victims? How do you think it sounds to the Palestinians? How do you think it sounds to the Afghanis, to the Iraqis, to the Libyans, to the Mexicans, to the Nicaraguans, to the Salvadorans, to the Vietnamese? I'm just saying this for perspective, just for you to have some perspective. What you inflicted on people all around the world was far worse, far more violent, far more intense, and you did it for far longer. 10, 20, 50, 100 times longer, and 10,000 times worse. Just consider that. I'm saying just consider it, just reflect on that, because it's real, and it should give you some perspective, honestly. I mean, I appreciate your anger, I appreciate your panic, but I need to be completely honest with you. I need to be completely honest with you about several things that you may find difficult to hear. First of all, you need to understand your actual position. You need to understand your actual position. You're not suffering from a broken system. You're living under your system, operating perfectly normally, completely normally. What you're experiencing is not a deviation from so-called American democracy. It's what American democracy actually is and always has been. The difference now is that the violence, the coercion, and the cruelty that America has always exported that globally, now it's becoming slightly more visible domestically. And you're finally seeing what the rest of the world has experienced from America for generations. So don't overlook this. Don't be dismissive about this reality because it's very informative. The nature of your country, of your society, of your system has been viciously demonstrated to the rest of the world for a very long time. Your victims internationally have known and have understood you better than you ever understood yourselves. That's the truth. And yes, that includes the members of the global majority who live inside your country, you know, the ones who you call minorities, Africans, Asians, Muslims, so-called Latinos. The global majority has always known how your system actually is, how it truly operates, whether they live in the lands of their origin or they live inside your borders. And obviously, the indigenous people of America have never not known the reality of America's so-called democracy. So first of all, like I said, don't fool yourself into thinking that your system has broken. And don't fool yourself into thinking that it has changed for the worse. This is how it has always been. Wallahi, this is how it has always been. And the only thing that has modified is maybe, perhaps, that it is less racially discriminatory about who they oppress. So if you want to call that broken, or you want to say that it's worse now than it was before, then all you're actually saying is that it was better when it was only violent and only vicious on a strictly racial basis, when it was only cruel and savage to innocent people in faraway places. Which means that you don't actually have a problem with that. You don't have a problem with the cruelty and the savagery. You don't have a problem with the brutality in principle. You just want that brutality to always be explicitly racist and explicitly elsewhere. In other words, you disapprove of Leopold cutting off Belgian hands, but you don't disapprove of him cutting off Congolese hands. ICE isn't an aberration. The deportations are not a deviation. The camps are not a glitch in your system. This is the system. This is what America does. Trump isn't hijacking your country. He's just doing what American presidents have always done. You just didn't see it. He's maybe doing it with a little bit lower quality public relations management, but Obama deported more people than any president before him. Biden continued building Trump's wall. The differences are just aesthetics. There's no difference in substance between this party or that party. Understand this. I mean, you could easily imagine Trump's belligerence actually being nothing but an opening gambit of the power structure. Think about it. You hype up the Nazis, you hype up the fascist signaling, so that then you can stage a coup to topple Trump and his administration, and then you could completely suspend the Constitution, cancel elections, seize total control, and install a supremely fascist government while depicting that as a counter-fascist rescue operation, and everyone would cheer for you. Everyone would applaud. Meanwhile, everything proceeds as before, but without the backlash. Your broken system has functioned exactly as designed for 250 years, concentrating wealth upwards, projecting violence outwards, and maintaining domestic control through a combination of material comfort for just enough people, just the right class of people, and spectacular violence against anyone who resists or anyone who exists outside the protected categories.
Family, I really like Shahid Bolsen's work because family, he speaks about nothing but the truth. In this video, he's spoken about how white America is terrified, how they're seeing the system currently working in America. He says that the system is still the same. The system ain't broken. The system has been operating the same way for the last 250 years in America. Family, the wealth has been concentrated in the top, while the people down have been facing a lot of violence. He's telling white America that nothing has changed. The only change right now is that it does not care your race. It doesn't care where you're coming from. White folks are feeling the heaviness for the first time, and right now they're terrified. Family, Shahid Bolsen also tells white people in America that the same heaviness they're feeling right now, other countries have been feeling the same as a result of the power that America has always had over them. Family, I'm talking about Libya, Iraq, Venezuela. Look at all these other countries who are feeling the heaviness, that comes with America. The system hasn't changed. That's how the system in America has always operated. Family, I'd want you to watch this video all the way to the end and you listen in to what Shahid Bolsen has to say to white America. I'd say that there is an urgent, lecture that white America should actually listen to. Once the video is done, we will get back and do a critical analysis about the same. Fam, in a special way, I'd also want to take this opportunity to thank my subscribers who are supporting this channel by buying me a coffee. I do not take your support for granted. The link for buying a coffee is on the description box down below. Let's watch the video, then we will be right back.
What's happening now isn't the system breaking down. It's you finally seeing it clearly, at least some of you. Some of you are seeing it clearly now for what it is. Actually coming to terms with this should recalibrate your reaction to what's going on. Otherwise, there's still a lot more that you're denying rather than recognizing, because you don't need a leader. You don't need instructions. You need a complete ideological reorientation, wallahi. I've seen Americans online talking about they need a leader. They need a leader to give them a strategy within the existing framework of American society. That's exactly backwards. What you need is to completely abandon the intellectual and the moral framework that brought you to this point. You understand me? You need to decolonize your mind before you can effectively resist anything. You don't even know what you're resisting. Otherwise, you're not trying to change. You're just trying to avoid the consequences of what you have always approved, of what you still approve, if we're being honest. You understand you're not actually recognizing the reality when you only are disavowing or trying to distance yourself from the consequences, but you're still upholding the utterly deceitful narratives about your society and about your culture and about your system. You understand me? You're acting like consequences are nothing but a coincidence, because you've been programmed with a series of false premises that you need to get over. A premise like that America is fundamentally good and that it only occasionally makes mistakes. This is patently false. It's systematic. You believe that the Constitution is some sort of a sacred document representing universal values. That's false. You believe that American institutions can be reformed to serve justice. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You can't take an electric chair and convert it into a life support system. You think that your vote matters in determining the direction of power. Not even slightly. Not even slightly. You think that you live in a society that's governed by law rather than by force? No. Only the most privileged people in your society can still tell themselves that blatant lie. Only the most privileged in your society could possibly believe that. You believe that your country's violence abroad is somehow separate from the conditions at home? I mean, tell me how. Tell me how. You think that a nation can have a split personality? You think that you just get married to Dr. Jekyll and you never have to deal with Mr. Hyde? You think that you can be a good person while maintaining complicity in a fundamentally evil system? That's the peak, that's the pinnacle of cognitive dissonance. And it's an insult to even the concept of what being a good person is. Every single one of these premises is false. Every single one of these premises is false. And until you fully internalize that they are false, not theoretically, not as an intellectual exercise, but as a lived reality that reshapes how you see everything, well, then you're never going to be able to effectively resist anything because you're still going to be operating from within the logic of the system itself. You do not have a virtuous system. You don't have a virtuous system that you have to try to reclaim and try to recover and try to salvage. You never had a virtuous system. You never had a virtuous culture or a society that ever genuinely understood, even understood, much less valued virtue. That's a fact. And denying this is itself evidence that you still adhere to that anti-virtuous mentality. This is like asking, how do I convince my abusive partner to stop hitting me? This is what you're asking. The question itself reveals that you haven't yet accepted the fundamental nature of that relationship. Do you understand me? The answer isn't better communication. The answer isn't finding the right argument to convince your abusive partner. The answer is recognizing that the relationship itself is the problem. You don't have an abusive partner. You have an abuser. You understand? You're not in a relationship. You're in a crime scene. So, okay, if you are genuinely sincere, if you're genuinely a mature and honest American citizen, and you're truly serious about any sort of meaningful change in your country, or at least in your own life, I have already talked about this many times. But given where you are, here's what you can, what's realistically possible, in my opinion. First, on an individual level, you have to accept, like I say, that you have to accept that you are living in a declining empire that's built on systemic violence. You're living in a declining empire that absolutely deserves to decline. And that never deserved, in fact, never deserved in the first place to be an empire. Because like I said, you need to change from the ground up, from the individual level, from the micro level to the macro level. Your reflex is going to be that that's useless. Your reflex is going to say, this is inadequate. This doesn't help. Because you've got ICE out there, right? You've got ICE going door to door, kidnapping people off the streets, killing people, assaulting people, disappearing people. So you want an answer, you want a solution, you want an immediate remedy right now that's going to stop this from happening. But that in and of itself, I'm telling you, that in and of itself is just a reflex reaction. It's like a gambler who lost this particular bet, and now the bookies and forces are after him. So he thinks that his only problem is the beat down that he's about to get because of having lost that bet. No, you are a degenerate gambler. You need to fix that problem while you still have some bones left to break. You understand me? Stop consuming American exceptionalist propaganda. Stop believing it. Stop pretending that America's crimes are historical aberrations. They're not. That's their character. Study actual history. Learn the perspectives of America's victims, the ones that you bombed and sanctioned and subjugated. Read Frantz Fanon. Read Nkrumah, Kwame Nkrumah. Read Malcolm X. Read Sukarno. Read James Baldwin. Read what the global South and the global majority has been trying to tell you for centuries. And then try to restructure your individual relationship to the system. You cannot reform this system from within because the system does not allow any meaningful challenges to itself. Every mechanism of change that you have access to, voting, peaceful protest, petitioning, and so forth. All of this exists precisely because it does not threaten power. The system has given you these outlets to dissipate your resistance into harmless activities. You understand? Power exists outside the pale of any so-called democratic mechanisms. They've got you voting for singers, not for record producers and not for label executives. You understand? Like those American Idol shows. You don't vote for anyone who runs things, and anyone that you do vote for doesn't run things. They themselves are run by the people and by the institutions that you don't even know about, that you can't even name, much less that you have any mechanisms to hold them to account. So if you're out here saying that Trump is the problem, or you were out here saying that Biden was the problem, or that the Republicans are the problem, or that the Democrats are the problem, no, you're the problem. If you're saying that, then you're the problem. Your government does not represent you. It represents capital, and it always has. Once you truly accept this and recognize this, then you're going to stop wasting your energy on strategies that presume otherwise. And yes, you have to find an actual moral architecture. I've talked about this many, many times. Again, I know that this is going to sound strange, but it is completely serious. Most Americans who want to resist the system, in reality, themselves have no coherent moral framework to resist from. You've been given a collection of liberal platitudes about human rights, about dignity, about democracy, and so forth. Decorative language with no structural integrity. These concepts have always been defined for you by the very so-called civilization that built the system that you're trying to resist. And they're designed to be compatible with that system, not with whatever you have in your head. You've been raised believing that the recitation of these talking points is the same thing as thinking, it's the same thing as understanding, and that abstract principles are the same thing as lived, practical integration of principles. That's completely wrong. You have no real conviction. That's the truth. Because you have never seen in your life anyone actually embody principles in their decision making and in their behavior, unless it was just to brag about it, unless it was just to virtue signal about it, or to put it on Instagram. You understand? Because in order to actually embody principles, well, you have to understand them. You have to understand them, and you have to internalize them, and you have to integrate them practically in your life. Not just put them on a t-shirt. Not just put it on a bumper sticker. And your society, your so-called civilization, has never prioritized that. They never emphasized that. So they never taught you that. They never taught you how to do that. They never even taught you that that's a thing to be done. No, you need an actual moral framework, one that provides clear standards for right and wrong. I mean, not just something that you use to judge others, which is what you mostly do, but something that you actually comply with yourself. Something that's not based on your own convenience, your own comfort, your own desires. Something with actual integrity, with actual commitment, with actual conviction. You know, a moral framework that cannot be negotiated away by power or by money. That gives you something to stand on when every institution around you is corrupt. And that also lets you objectively evaluate when you yourself might be getting corrupted. Because if you're honest, I think that you'll have to admit that most of the time when you see someone talking about morality or talking about right and wrong, they're only doing it in order to apply judgment or disapproval about others, upon others, and only invoking that as a way to chastise or criticize or complain about not getting what you want or about not being treated the way you think you deserve. Very, very rarely do you ever see someone talking about morals applied in any form of self-assessment, self-evaluation. Well, that's not a moral framework. That's a martial art. You're using that as a way of conflict, as a way of power projection. Obviously, like I've said before, for honest people, especially for Westerners, especially for Americans, the truth of the matter is that Islam is actually the only civilizational framework that's available to you that actually provides a genuine, practical, moral structure that you can adopt. I'm not proselytizing. I'm not making da'wah here. I'm making an analytical observation. This is an objective fact. Christianity already deformed itself completely centuries ago to accommodate power. And secular humanism, so-called, is just Christianity without a God and has all the same vulnerabilities. It's the same. Yes, every other option that you might think of is just a boutique philosophy that caters to each individual's desires. I'm telling you, you can't tell the difference between architecture and arson. That's the truth. I mean, let's be honest. We're talking about a population where more than half of you read at a 6th grade level. At a 6th grade, and that's an American 6th grade level, by the way, not the international 6th grade. So when you're talking about 6th grade for you, that's maybe 3rd or 4th grade for Singapore, for example. I'm telling you, your minds have been so corroded, they've been so corroded your whole life, with propaganda, with attention span reducing media, with cognitive dissonance, cognitive damage. You've been raised in a culture of selfishness and amorality, of addiction, of anxiety, of confusion, on and on and on. And you tell yourself that you can actually craft your own independent moral frameworks Meanwhile, you can't even concentrate for more than 3 minutes at a time. Be serious. Listen, humility is a superpower. Honestly, it's a superpower. If you can be humble, because accurate, merciless self-assessment can be a superpower, and you have to have some humility to do that. Because then you can actually admit what you need to learn, when you need instruction, when you need guidance. And then you can actually get that instruction and guidance and that learning. But if you're too arrogant to do that, then wallahi, you consign yourself to being a lost cause just for the sake of your own ego and for the sake of your own pride. No, you and I both know that you are not up for it. You're not equipped for it. You're not equipped to try to cobble together anything like a coherent, rooted, reliable moral framework for yourself. You can't do it. And it doesn't matter that it is your society and it is your culture and your so-called civilization that rendered you incapable. The fact is you are incapable, most of you. Most of you. And again, everyone, I mean everyone outside the United States watches you babbling online and you look absolutely mental. The mental health crisis in America is real. The wiring of your collective brain is frayed. You're not in a position to DIY a moral framework, not have it be any better whatsoever than whatever framework you're using right now. Now, I'm not saying that you have to become a Muslim. You should, obviously, and the most intelligent people among you will do that, because this is the only way that you can be complete, truly. And like I said before, there is, in fact, no better and no more profound and no more effective and no more comprehensive and no more meaningful rejection of Western barbarism than embracing Islam. I mean, look, the clash between civilizations, right? Samuel Huntington, that's not wrong in concept, except we're not talking about a clash between civilizations. We're talking about a clash between Western barbarity and Islamic civilization. We built a civilization and you called it an empire, and you built an empire and called it a civilization. So any rational person would understand, any rational, reasonable, intelligent person would understand that the most anti-imperial move that you could make would be to become a Muslim. It's our civilization that your empire has been fighting for centuries. So it just makes common sense that you should be on the side of the civilization. But okay, like I said, I know that your wiring is crossed. I know that this is too much for you to think about. But at least you need to acknowledge that you are operating in a moral vacuum. And until you fill that vacuum with something that's structurally sound, you need to understand that your resistance is going to collapse the moment it becomes inconvenient, like it always has, like it's doing right now. I mean, imagine the first thing that you do when things get a little bit hard. But okay, let's say that you do the work individually. Let's say that you actually do the work individually. Well, then the next thing, obviously, the next thing is going to be doing work on the community level. And I've talked about this many, many times. You need to start building parallel structures, parallel networks, parallel power systems, ecosystems. You're not going to capture state institutions. That's not going to happen. They exist to prevent capture by the population. The best that you can do is to build alternative structures that meet your people's needs outside the state systems, outside the state structures. Mutual aid networks that don't rely on NGO funding or government grants and so forth. Alternative education systems, homeschooling networks, study circles, skill sharing, and so on. You need to try to build local food systems, community gardens, farmer cooperatives, direct purchasing, group purchasing, and so forth. You need alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, community mediation, restorative justice circles, and so on. Obviously, you need alternative media. To a great extent, we've already got some of that. You need local publications, study groups, community radio, and so on. You need economic cooperation, tool libraries, time banks, worker cooperatives, and so forth. All of these things you can set up. These are all things that I've talked about at length before. This is you creating strategically independent community infrastructure that can actually reduce your dependence upon the system that you are never going to be able to control. And it's going to create some space for you where potentially different values can be practiced and defended. Wallahi, I'm telling you, this is your only chance. Stop thinking that you can change the system and start building your own.
Family, it's barely 2 years since Donald Trump took over office for the second term. And for the first time in a while, white people are feeling the heaviness. They are seeing, how life is becoming difficult under the leadership of Donald J. Trump. But family, Shahid Bolsen has one message to white America. This is nothing new. This is what black people have been going through This is what the American system has always pushed over the years. The only difference is that probably white folks did not feel the heaviness before. He says that these very same things have happened to other countries under the power that America has. Family, Shahid Bolsen says that white folks want a way out just under 2 years since Donald Trump took over office. He says, how do you think it sounds, to American global victims? Palestinians, Iraqis, Libyans, Nicaraguans, and Victimanes, they felt it for so long. Vietnamese, sorry, they felt it for so long. They've been feeling whatever America can perpetuate in their countries. And family, this is what white folks have been missing over the years. What Shahid Bolsen is telling them is that nothing has changed. The American system is not broken now. Now that it's affecting them, the American system ain't broken. The very same system has attacked other countries. This system has made life difficult for other demographic of people apart from white folks. This message doesn't resonate with many white people because they are facing problems they've never faced for the first time in a while. And family, whatever Shahid Bolsen tells them makes a lot of sense. What America has inflicted to the world is far worse than whatever they are feeling right now. Whatever America has done to other countries is heavier than whatever they are feeling right now. Right now, the things they are facing is ICE unaliving white people. That ain't close to whatever America has done to the rest of the world. Family, it's crazy that the moment white folks are being targeted for the first time, they're terrified, they're shaking, they need help. Shahid Bolsen tells them, this is how the system operates. This is how the system has always been. The system ain't broken. That is America for you. In fact, he says that any other president in America has always worked for the system. He even mentioned Obama. He says that even during the time of Obama, there were a lot, of mass deportations. Family, he says that whatever all these presidents are doing is work for the system and ensure that they do whatever they need to do to maintain the status that the system wants. Family proceeds to say that you are not suffering in a broken system, but in your system is working perfectly normally. This is what American democracy has been over the years. Family, the only difference is that white folks many a times have never been victims, but that is how the American democracy has worked. That's how the American system has long been operating. Nothing has worked differently. That is the message that Shahid Bolsen has in this video. Family, he proceeds to say that the violence America has been exporting globally is now being felt locally. The energy America has been giving other countries globally is now being felt locally, and white folks are feeling the heaviness. I'm talking about the cost of living. I'm talking about ICE raids. I'm talking about ICE, unaliving people. Family, they're feeling that heaviness for the first time. Economic, collapse. They're feeling that for the very first time. America generally is also collapsing. The system is not working as it actually should. Family, there is a lot of problems right now in America. That is why white folks are feeling the heaviness and they are crying out loud. But family, Shahid Bolsen reaffirms them, saying that that is how the system has been working. They've been in a privileged point, but right now it's working differently. That is how things are. That is how black people and other marginalized groups have been feeling. Family, that is how people in America have been feeling the heat that white folks have not been feeling. This is the truth that nobody has told white America for the longest time. Family, Complaining when the problem reaches you feels racist, according to Shahid Bolsen. Fam, other people have been complaining and you all have been saying that, black people are acting out, black people want to play the victim card, black people are becoming dramatic, but you all are feeling it right now. The things that have been mentioned for the longest time is now starting to pinch you. You're starting to see the heaviness, that other demographic of people have been feeling in America. Family, you're starting to feel what Latinos have been feeling, what black people have been feeling in America. This is the truth that many people do not mention for you all. Complaining when the problem reaches you, I repeat again, feels racist, or you just didn't see it, happening to other people. Your broken system, has functioned as designed for over 250 years. This system you all are seeing, you all are terming it as broken right now. That's the very system that Americans have been going through for the last 250 years. Family, that statement was so heavy for me. There is nothing different. The system that is making you suffer today is the very same system that has ensured that marginalized people in America are underprivileged over all these years. Family, the wealth over the last 250 years was concentrated, upwards. The wealthy people have always continued to enjoy, while violence has been projected downwards. That is how the broken system you all are talking about has been working. That is the American democracy. That is how other countries have felt the heaviness out of America. Family, let me know in the comment section down below what you think about the video. Do you believe that indeed American system is not only affecting Americans, but people all over the world? These are call up, to white folks to know that this is how people have been feeling over the years. This shoe is one that you all were not wearing. But right now, the shoe is fitting in your legs. You're feeling the heaviness that comes with a system that has been working for you in your own country. Fam, let me know in the comment box what you think. Kindly like the video so that it can be recommended to other YouTube users, and I'd be very, very grateful. Family, kindly consider subscribing to the channel. We are currently on the road to 50,000 subscribers. Fam, I do believe that with consistency, with your support, we shall be able to achieve that milestone very, very soon. Family, thank you so much, and I really hope to see you all in our next episode. Goodbye for now.